Hello, I want to talk about raw meaty bones. There's a lot of fear and a lot of concerns about feeding our dogs raw meaty bones, but if we look at the situation in a wise way and use all the information that we know about raw meaty bones and align that with higher intelligence, we'll gain wisdom from that and we'll be able to safely give our dogs raw meaty bones in line with their personality, their age, their nutritional status, their physiology, any current health concerns that they may have as the result of being an ageing dog like Marco, compared to a younger dog like Morty. Now, when we look at the macronutrients, carbohydrates versus proteins versus fats, vitamins, minerals, and also the moisture in the diet, we need to look at the contribution of raw meaty bones. So where are they on that sort of macronutrient level? Well, raw meaty bones are high in phosphorus and calcium because, of course, they've got the bone and they've also got the raw meat with that, which is high in phosphorus, and higher in phosphorus depending on which species of meat is attached to that, is on that bone. Now, with respect to the constitution or the makeup of bones, because we have calcium and phosphorus, of course, the nutrient level isn't going to be a complete one. So we then look at bones and say, okay, what are we giving them for and how much should we give? So basically we're giving them for emotional satisfaction, also to help clean the teeth, also to help our dogs manipulate items, get dexterity in their forelimbs, emotional satisfaction, also add to their nutritional profile, the calcium and the phosphorus, also provide them with emotional satisfaction, as I mentioned before. So when we're looking at bones and we're looking at things that can be common concerns, choking risks, for example. Now, raw meaty bones, when they're nice and fresh, they've got a nice big chunk of meat on them, and you have a nice bone that's a good size, that's bigger than your dog's jaw, probably similar size to their head, we can see that the choking risk is going to be reduced and eliminated. Having a raw meaty bone that's the size of your dog's head is going to then promote more gnawing behaviour, but also just using the incisors to nip off and chip off small pieces of bone rather than attempting to swallow a smaller bone whole, which can be often the case when we see episodes that might be associated with potential choking hazards. The other thing is, if your dog isn't sitting down and nice and calm, enjoying their bone in this situation, but your dog has a bone and then runs off around the yard, well then we can see that that's going to be incompatible with promoting calm behaviour and promoting a safe, supervised manner of your dog enjoying that high-value resource. Also, leaving bones lying around after they've been gnawed on for hours and leaving them in the backyard for 2 or 3 days, then they're hard, they're brittle, they're smaller because they've been chewed down, and then they're just left without any supervision, and your dog may pick that bone up, and that's when we can also have a choking hazard. So looking at those different situations and thinking about how to provide emotional satisfaction with raw meaty bones, but reducing any potential risks that might be associated with them. And the main one is choking risks. Now, the size of the bone. Okay, just talked about that. Which bone? So avoid the long bones, any weight-bearing bones that will be associated with the legs. Now, the best bones, the most suitable bones that we can give to our dogs are going to be the ones that have got a nice big chunk of meat attached to them, but they're going to be more malleable and they're going to be looking a little bit membranous. And you can see on the video footage here, there's some examples here. They're frozen, but they look different, of course, when they're defrosted. Never defrost bones in the microwave. Always defrost them in the fridge overnight and then take them out so they're room temperature. Or you can put them in a Tupperware container and then put them in a sink full of hot water just to warm them through the plastic to defrost them quicker. So if try to defrost bones in the microwave, you will change the matrix and the constituents of the bone itself. You'll make them more brittle. Even if they've been defrosted for 30 seconds, you'll still change the composition of the bone, and that can alter the efficiency and the ease of digestibility for your dog. So that's something else to keep in mind. Now, bones should really take up maybe, say, 5 to 10% of our dog's daily diet. But when we think about that, daily diet, okay, if we did that, if we gave our dog a raw meaty bone every single day, then it's likely that we're going to see gastrointestinal issues. And that's because billions of dogs are fed a commercial dry diet every day. So if we look at that raw meaty bone that's got bone in it and raw meat, all of that takes quite a bit to digest. So if we did that for our dogs and gave them bone every single day, we could actually have a constipated dog. So we need to take into account all of the other foods that we're giving our dogs. So, for example, with Marco, because of his kidney issues, he's an older dog, so I have to watch his phosphorus content, as I mentioned. With Morty, that's not a problem. He's a young dog. Kidneys are fine. When I'm looking at the differences between Marco and Morty, then basically what I would do is I would ensure that the raw meaty bone that Marco has is just one part of his diet for the whole week, but on the day that he gets that bone, I would make sure that he would have more moist and liquid-based foods to help ease that in that digestion. With Morty, I may provide him with a moderately moist or liquid, or when I say liquid, I mean chicken broth added to his carbohydrate and his vegetables, for example, which I would give him around about 5 or 6 hours later as a small supper, which is part of his total volume of his food. For example, for Marco, he would basically probably get half the amount of carbohydrate in the form of grain that I would usually give him. So it's just basically about adjusting the food portions, looking at the moisture content of the food that you're giving a dog, and adding that all up and just making little changes, little subtle changes on the days that you're providing your dog with a raw meaty bone. Now, a dog will eat around about 2 to 6% of their body weight every day in calories, and that depends on their age, their reproductive status, if they're impregnated, also whether they're a growing puppy or whether they're a senior dog like Marco. So we have to take that all into account. And what I would suggest first of all is to make sure that before you're providing your dog with a raw meaty bone, always provide them with a small moisture-based meal. And when I say moisture-based meal, for example, this morning before these guys had their bones, they had their usual porridge breakfast. They had some oatmeal with some soy milk, some chia seeds and some blueberries in that. And that was a nice moist meal for their breakfast. And then it's now 4 or 5 hours later and they're having a raw meaty bone. And so you can see now I've actually provided them with a small meal that then starts their digestive processes happening, which is then going to make it easier for them to digest that raw meaty bone when they have that. A couple of hours later. Sorry, not 5 or 6 hours later, a couple of hours later. So that's really important because we don't just want to load them with a raw meaty bone on an empty stomach. We want to just provide them with a small meal a couple of hours beforehand, and because it takes a few hours for that food to digest anyway, and so we will have all those digestive enzymes primed, and they will be ready to go when your dog's wanting to digest that raw meaty bone as they're eating it. So the other thing I would probably like to mention is also just starting them out very gently, as I mentioned, just once a week, and start with providing them in an area like this where you're supervising them for, say, 45 minutes. And you can see Marco's wandered away from his bone, but he actually may have eaten it all. So you can supervise them, and then when they've lost interest in the bone, then just nonchalantly, casually pick the bone up and throw it away. And so what you're doing is you're then not leaving bones lying around to be subjected to the environment, to get even more brittle, to get even more sort of less hygienic, which can then cause your dog's some issues if they go back and start chewing on that bone again. So it's all about using the knowledge about bones, bless you, Marco, using the knowledge and just thinking about it not from a fear-based perspective, because then you're going to avoid them and then you're going to miss out on providing your dog with wonderful benefits. And we also need to remember that the carbohydrates in the dry food biscuits, they're also contributing to the plaque that you see on your dog, that occur on the dog's teeth. And that's because dogs don't have the enzyme in their saliva to break down carbohydrates. That's done by other organs in the body. So with respect to the health of your dog's mouth, the benefits are that we're getting a natural cleaning of the teeth and a massaging of the gums. It's also very emotionally satisfying for puppies that are going through their teething phase, because that's painful, and that can also soothe. It also massages the gums, but it also provides the nutrients and emotional satisfaction as well. And all of these things combine to your dog's nutritional level, your dog's emotional satisfaction level, but also it also provides your dog with the ability to perform behaviours that they also need to do, which is chewing, which is exercising their jaw, which is also manipulating things with their feet as well. And when we think about how dogs, way back before we started genetically manipulating them, how they actually hunted for their prey, for their food, and foraged for their food, when we think about that and look at what's happening now, we can see that by blaming the poor old humble raw meaty bone, we're only looking at that in isolation and not looking at all of the things that we are contributing to, not just deficiencies in our dogs' emotional satisfaction, but also the deficiencies in their nutrition and also how they forage and naturally forage and naturally hunt for their food. So I'd like you to just think about that, and if you haven't provided your dog with a raw meaty bone, just take into account all the things that I've talked about today and start slowly, and just take into account your dog's personality, their age, their mobility, their stage of life, and consider what you're feeding them now. And I would also urge you to look at the modified home diet that I talked about. That's in the video up in the link there in the corner of the screen. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll talk again soon. Yes, Marco, I know. Woody. What? Woody. Woody. Yeah, good boy. Good boy.